Escape while you can.
You will bring me great honor.
You will die where you stand. Give in. You're dead already.
Get out of here! What?
Where is that snake?
Run while you still can, child. Fool.
challenge me. Oof!
Okay, Outlander, but make it quick.
There's someone watching me. I can tell.
I will listen, Outlander, but make it quick. Welcome to the humble shop of Tiras Sedus, trader and purveyor of quality general merchandise. Shall I tell you about my trade, or would you perhaps be interested in doing a little work for me? I sold an Ashlander handcrafted racer suede belt to a customer, but he has failed to make his final payment on time. If you would find Aeneas Sarandus and get back my belt, or get the overdue payment of 50 septums he owes me, I will pay you 25 gold. The young fellow's family has lived in Aldrun a long time. His parents died recently and left him their house and estate, but Aeneas has fallen in with a fast crowd. I believe he's taken to drinking expensive liquor and has incurred some gambling debts. He's a charming lad. Everyone likes him, but he's not very sensible. And suddenly becoming rich seems to have made him an irresponsible fool.
Where's that slave? I don't know to go.
I'm Danes Redothril, the pawnbroker. I am looking for a fellow named Aeneas Sarandus. I sold him 2 fine matched rings, one with an raw ebony stone, the other with a raw glass stone, but he has failed to pay the remaining 150 drakes owed. If you will find Sarandus, and either get the ebony ring and the glass ring and return them to me, or get the overdue payment of 150 drakes he owes me, I will pay you 50 gold. The young fellow's family has lived in Aldrun a long time. His parents died recently and left him their house and estate, but Aeneas has fallen in with a fast crowd. I believe he's taken to drinking expensive liquor and has incurred some gambling debts. He's a charming lad. Everyone likes him, but he's not very sensible. And suddenly becoming rich seems to have made him an irresponsible fool. Go ahead. I'm an officer of the Imperial Law. Move along. Scar is the shell of the Emperor Crab Outlander. The homes and shops of the manor district inside are under Scar.
Pleased to meet you. I'm Codus Colonus, bookseller. Welcome to Aldrun. What can I do for you? Let's hear it.
Nothing is more revolting to Dunmer feeling than the sorry spectacle of another Dunmer enslaved by that derivative moon sugar known as skooma. And nothing is less appetizing than listening to the pathetic tales of humiliation and degradation associated with a victim of this addictive drug. Why, then, do I force myself upon you with this extended and detailed account of my sins and sorrows? Because I hope that by telling my tale, the hope of redemption from this sorry state shall be more widely known. And because I hope that others who have also fallen into the sorry state of skooma addiction may therefore hear of my story, of how I fell into despair, and how I once again found myself and freed myself from my own self-imposed chains. Because it is widely known to all Khajiit, who may be expected to know, that there is no cure for addiction to skooma, that once a slave to skooma, always a slave to skooma. Because this is widely known, it is taken to be true. But it is not true, and I am living proof. There is no miracle cure, there is no potion to be taken, there is no magical incantation which frees you from the thrill of skooma running through your blood. But it is through the understanding of that thrill and the acceptance of the lust within oneself for that thrill and the casting aside of the shame that the thrill-seeker feels when he cannot set aside what becomes in the end his only comfort and pleasure. It is through this knowledge and understanding that the victim comes to the place where choices may be made, where despair and hope may be separated. In short, only knowledge and acceptance can deliver into the slave's hands the key that opens his shackles and sets him free. The narrative of Tilsasendas's tale carries the reader through the stages of early infatuation, ecstatic obsession, and profound degradation of her addiction. And in the course of the story she subtly enables the reader to discover that the hopelessness of the addict comes from the addict's own unconscious assumption that only a helpless and foolish person could become addicted to skooma, and that, consequently, no such helpless and foolish person could ever achieve the admittedly difficult task of renouncing, once tasted, the exquisite delights of the skooma. Tilsasendas shows that once the addict overcomes the burden of her own self-despising, that there is the possibility of redemption. And against all of society's dearly held beliefs, she says that it is not altogether clear that the addict should renounce the sugar, but that it is only one of the choices that the skooma addict must make. Tilsasendas's casual proposition that skooma addiction is not necessarily a sign of moral and personal weakness is essential to her thesis that a cure is possible, but it has not endeared her or her book to the upright and conservative elements of Dunmer society. A less rude song by Anonymous. They say the Iliac Bay is the place to barrel around without a bit of apparel on, as advertised in that carol song, a tune that's sung as the west wind blows, about its lovely not wearing any clothes, ladies singing high notes, men singing low notes, implying that the most luscious depravity and complete absence of serious gravity can only be found in the waterous cavity of Iliac Bay. If you are the type who is more a sinner than a sinned, you'll find it all in Morrowind. But the truth, my child, is that nothing more wild than an ordinary fashion kind of slightly mad passion can be detected, if at all, in Sentinel and Daggerfall. Whatever your odd needs, feathered, scaled, or finned, you'll find it all in Morrowind. It's an invention of bards that Bretons and Redguards have more than some staid fun and suffer deviant fornication. For the most of madness, not the least, the wise debaucher heads out east. Where your once steely reserve is now merely tinned, you'll find it all in Morrowind. In Morrowind there is sin, but pray do not confuse Dunmer variety with that found in tepid Western society, compared to which it nearly is piety. It isn't terribly ingenious calling it prudery, observing the dark elf aversion to nudity. After all, the preferred sort of ludity in these parts is far more pernicious. From the ashlanders to the wettest fishes, you'll find pleasure and pain quite delicious precious in Morrowind. If you find yourself with unkind kinship with your kin, you'll find it all in Morrowind. Historians often portray the human settlement of Tamriel as a straightforward process of military expansion of the Nords of Skyrim. In fact, human settlers occupied nearly every corner of Tamriel before Skyrim was even founded. These so-called Nedic peoples include the Proto-Cyrodiilians, the ancestors of the Bretons, the aboriginals of Hammerfell, and perhaps a now-vanished human population of Morrowind. Strictly speaking, the Nords are simply another of these Nedic peoples, the only one that failed to find a method of peaceful accommodation with the elves who already occupied Tamriel. Ysgramor was certainly not the first human settler in Tamriel. In fact, in Fleeing Civil War in Atmora, as the Song of Return states, Ysgramor was following a long tradition of migration from Atmora. Tamriel had served as a safety valve for Atmora for centuries before Ysgramor's arrival. Malcontents, dissidents, rebels, landless younger sons all made the difficult crossing from Atmora to the new world of Tamriel. New archaeological excavations date the earliest human settlements in Hammerfell, High Rock and Cyrodiil at Merethic era, year 800 to 1000, centuries earlier than Ysgramor, even assuming that the 12 Nord kings prior to Harald were actual historical figures. The Nedic peoples were a minority in a land of elves and had no choice but to live peacefully with the elder race. In High Rock, Hammerfell, Cyrodiil, and possibly Morrowind, they did just that, and the Nedic peoples flourished and expanded over the last centuries of the Merethic era. Only in Skyrim did this accommodation break down, an event recorded in the Song of Return. Perhaps, being close to reinforcements from Atmora, the Proto-Nords did not feel it necessary to submit to the authority of the Skyrim elves. Indeed, the early Nord chronicles note that under King Harald, the first historical Nord ruler, First Era, year 113 to 221, the Atmoran mercenaries returned to their homeland following the consolidation of Skyrim as a centralized kingdom. Whatever the case, the pattern was set. In Skyrim, expansion would proceed militarily, with human settlement following the frontier of conquest, and the line between human territory and elven territory was relatively clear. But beyond this zone of conflict, the other Nedic peoples continued to merge with their elven neighbours. When the Nord armies of the First Empire finally entered High Rock and Cyrodiil, they found Bretons and Proto-Cyrodiils already living there among the elves. Indeed, the Nords found it difficult to distinguish between elf and Breton. The two races had already intermingled to such a degree. The arrival of the Nord armies upset the balance of power between the Nedic peoples and the elves. Although the Nords' expansion into High Rock and Cyrodiil was relatively brief, less than 2 centuries, the result was decisive. From then on, power in those regions shifted from the elves to the humans. This is a volume of verse collected from wise women of the Urshilaku Ashlanders. It consists of verses composed by Ashlander warriors, champions, and Ashkans, committed to memory by the wise women and transmitted down the generations. May I Shrink to Dust is attributed to the long-dead poet and warrior Zershishi Mus Manul. Rise from darkness, Red Mountain, spread your dark clouds and green vapours, birth earthquakes, shatter stones, feed the winds with fire, flay the tents of the tribes from the land, feed the burned earth with our souls. Yet never shall you have your rule over me, never shall I tremble or flinch from your power, never shall I yield my home and hearth, and from my tears shall spring forth the flowers of grassland springs.